is trying to disempower the progressives in Congress. What I believe Jimmy is doing, whether or not you agree with him or the tactic he's using, is trying to use his platform to pressure the elected officials, the progressives that we have worked so hard and have this unprecedented number, to your point, in Congress, to do the thing that we want them to do, which is to use power when it falls in their lap. Now, in this instance, we didn't need to get a majority of progressives in Congress to enact the plan. That was the whole spark and magic of it. That was a very small number of people.
Well, let's take that first premise, though. The first premise that you made, the assertion that you don't think Jimmy's agenda is to disempower progressives.
I'm sorry. Which way is this going to go? I feel like I'm in the middle of a point. I feel like I've been letting you.
Okay, go.
If I could just finish this point. I have like a whole notepad of notes that I'm trying to catch up on from the various issues that you brought up that I think are important to address. Jimmy's perspective, I don't want to speak for him, but it seems obvious to me what he's doing, is to be the farthest, angriest version of the left, to create political pressure on progressives to do what they said they were going to do when they ran for office. One of those, AOC in particular, since she's come under focus, said that she wanted to oust Pelosi. She complained just this past January, a year ago now, that it was regrettable that the Democratic Party was so moderate, so to the right, that we couldn't even get a floor vote on Medicare for All. That's almost a direct quote. So what Jimmy's trying to do is say, I don't care about AOC per se, I don't care about the squad per se, I've invested in these individuals insofar as that they're advancing the interests of the progressive movement and are fighting tooth and nail for the policies that caused us to support them in the first place. And he is willing to become the antagonist in that by being the most ferocious attack dog to push them where they need to go. If AOC were to say, hey, this is my plan for Medicare for All, and demonstrate a fighting spirit, there's no one in this world, I think, who would imagine that Jimmy Dore would just randomly keep antagonizing her for no reason. No, doesn't have a vendetta out against AOC. Whether or not I think that his approach is most useful is a different question. So he doesn't have a vendetta out against AOC because he hates her or something. It's because he simply wants her to conform with her own campaign promises. So I want to put to you, Sam, what is the point of having these people in Congress if, when they have real power to leverage, they decline to do it?
I disagree with your assessment of how much power they had in this instance.
We do disagree that they could have held up the vote for Nancy Pelosi and ensured that she didn't get seated if they wanted to, given the way the voting structure that we just talked about.
They could have gotten rid of Nancy Pelosi by voting for McCarthy.
Well, sure, but they also could have gotten rid of.
Do you think they should have done that? Would you? Let me ask you this.
No, obviously not. So,
okay,
do you think they would have done it by voting for Barbara Lee and holding the votes until
what?
Until they get enough concessions?
Do you think that the Democrats? Do you think the Democrats do you think the Democrats in Congress, and do you think the Democrats in the general population, if let's say AOC and Tlaib and Omar and I don't know, Bowman and one or two others, Cori Bush, if they were preventing Nancy Pelosi from becoming Speaker of the House, where do you think public opinion would fall on this?
With them, because 3/4 of Americans revile Nancy Pelosi. That's the whole point.
You think that Democrats would do that?
No, I think that
you and I have a different assessment of what would happen in that scenario.
MSNBC and CNN and mainstream Democrats are going to very much side with Nancy Pelosi. I think the American public is going to aggressively side with the squad. I'm sorry?
How many mainstream Democrats do you think there are in this country?
What do you mean? The mainstream Democrats don't like Nancy Pelosi. I'm talking about pundits. I'm talking about people on TV.
Okay, pundits. But I'm talking about, when you talk about public opinion, you're saying that all the major vehicles to shape public opinion are going to be against those five who prevent Nancy Pelosi from being Speaker of the House.
Right, but it won't matter. It will redound negatively against him, just like it did, by the way, when the mainstream media lined up against Donald Trump, who still somehow managed to win in 2016. Here's the thing. The media can influence public opinion, but at a certain point, even they have to conform if they don't want to lose their audience. So this is a given.
You and I have a disagreement on what would happen in that scenario.
your feeling is that the public at large is going to say, oh, I hated Nancy Pelosi before, but now we're going to all side with her and against these enormously popular group of young black and brown.
The public at large is going to be so tired of conflict at that point that the idea that they're going to rally around AOC and Ilhan Omar and Cori Bush because they're preventing Nancy Pelosi from seating, I think that is, I think that's fantastical.
Okay, well, we have a very, very different.
We have a disagreement on that.
Of what it means for 75% of people to hate.
Since you started that with what Jimmy Dore's intentions are, okay? I'm sorry. The fact of the matter is that AOC, as a freshman Congress person, her strength comes from the fact that she is one of the biggest fundraisers in Congress. She does it all from small donations.
From us, yeah.
Exactly. And I think, I don't know what Jimmy Dore's intentions are. Maybe you do. I have watched Jimmy Dore for many years now, and I do remember when he attacked AOC as a sellout for, in the general election, supporting Andrew Cuomo. I don't know what motivates him, but I can tell you what the impact was. And the impact was is that, Fraud Squad went out there, and when AOC did not get that seat on the Energy and Commerce Committee, which is a crucial committee if you want to talk about Medicare for all, there was no pushback whatsoever. There was no, and so we didn't have her back there. And in other words, basically,
why did we have her back there, Sam?
They were able to disempower us by not giving us a voice on that committee, and they got no pushback from it.
AOC, the fact that AOC is reliant on her base for her power is a reason why AOC should listen to her base and not Nancy Pelosi. You have
I'm not convinced that the base is so big. You have 41,000 people who signed that petition.
Well, let's do this, Sam. Is it
There's 100 people out there.
You can't have it both ways. Is it that force the vote made it so that no one had AOC's back when she was denied the energy and commerce position, or is it that AOC's base is still with her and Jimmy Dore's base
story? The far sexier story for the media was about, the fraud squad hashtag.
First of all, the media barely covered that. The lefty media was interested, the internet was interested, but as with most things, it takes a big splash. It takes AOC herself to draw attention to the issue, which, by the way, the only reason, I want to be clear about this, the only reason we're talking about AOC and why she's such a focus of this is because she inserted herself into this conversation in the thread with Justin Jackson. So I think there's been a lot of bad faith discourse about the focus on AOC. I do think there is now, at this point, some undue focus on her. It's all of them together. I think that she's taking the heat for the inaction of a lot of other squad members who should also be in focus right now, and people who are progressives but not in the squad. But
right now, we should be rallying about getting Katie Porter a waiver so that she can sit on the Financial Services Committee.
That could have been one of the demands if they had decided to force a vote. They could have actually demanded specific committee positions,
but they gave up their power. That would have been a better maybe thing to ask for. I don't know.
Well, I don't know what you were asking for, but part of the vote campaign I was a part of explicitly said that we were going to ask for committee seats.
Well, that same thing that you were part of was basically saying fraud squad, and I wanted nothing to do with that.
And the fraud squad hashtag didn't even emerge until after the vote came out. So I'm not really sure.
I'm sorry. Listen,
that's what I'm talking about.
It's the only time I came out publicly, the first time I came out publicly with any negativity associated with that was when Jimmy Dore did that video. You know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about. Trended the day of the vote.
In terms of his agenda, one of the things that came out on that Slack, as you know, was that there was a lot of...
I don't know anything about anything. I'm not a part of the Slack. The Slack I'm a part of is the DSA Slack. I logged into it. I had a bunch of people making fun of me as well. But I don't decide to condemn the entire DSA.
I want to know what the video, I would like to know what the video is and what Sam has to say.
On the Slack channel, apparently somebody leaked some things, and there was a lot of people on there who were saying, this is important for the movement for a People's Party to show that, to make it out as if the progressives in the Democratic caucus are useless, and there is no reason for a progressive party, for a People's Party, if they're effective. And I'm
not true. What the Slack said was...
You didn't see the Slack.
No, No, I saw the clip. I don't have firsthand knowledge of the Slack because I'm not in the Slack. So when you said, as you well know, I thought you were implying that I was a part of that Slack conversation.
No, I didn't. I'm not part of the Slack either. I just saw the.
Well, pardon me, but the screen grab that was circulated by Ryan Grimm on Twitter said that if the squad doesn't do this, if the squad doesn't use their power, it's a demonstration of why we need third parties. And we can use this moment to demonstrate why we need an outside pressure from someone like the People's Party, because people who are a part of the Democratic Party are obviously unwilling or unable to flex the kind of muscle that we need to move the progressive movement forward. Now, you can frame that as, oh, I'm trying to, kill the squad so that we can get
well, I think that's very consistent with what Jimmy's been doing. He's been pushing for a third party for the past 6 years. And so, I mean, first it was the Green Party, and then it was, and frankly, again, I remember what Jimmy's prescription was. People can go and look at the debate that I had with Jimmy Dore in 2016, where he told me that Donald Trump was going to get nothing done, and it would bring us Elizabeth Warren. That was his argument. Plus, he didn't know what a filibuster was. And if we're talking about, I mean, you made some assertions about what Jimmy's intentions are. This is my understanding of Jimmy's intentions are in this context. And frankly, honestly, I felt like I got completely duped and did not, when I actually was, took Jimmy's first video and proposal for this, I was far more, I was naive about thinking that, oh, well, this is, I should have known. And I have to say that, I felt deep regret about that because I was duped. And I realized, and I don't know that he wasn't trying to dupe people. I think it's just in his nature. And it turned into something that became extremely corrosive as far as I'm concerned. And it undercut what little power I think progressives have in the Democratic Party.
So you agree that progressives had the power to hold up the vote?
Yeah, everybody had the power to hold up the vote.
So do you think that do you also agree that they should have held up the vote in exchange for something more, whether it's committee appointments or elimination of PAYGO?
I don't know if, frankly, I don't know how if you could organize people around the idea that, this one person should get on a committee or not. I'm not in Congress. What do
you mean organize people around?
Well, I mean, you need to get 5 or 6 or whatever, 10 people to vote as a block. Mm-hmm. And I'm not convinced that there could be something they could settle on that would work across, all of their agendas to do that, because it comes at some price. I mean, you say it doesn't, but the reason why AOC lost that vote for the Energy and Commerce Committee is because she was leading the charge to primary other sitting Democrats, and they don't like that.
And yet, a woman who, I'm sorry, I forget her name, the moderate who ended up withholding the vote this time, ended up getting a seat on that.
She voted against Pelosi last time and lost on the judiciary that she wanted.
Right.
This time around, it was reported by Politico before that she had been quiet about not voting for Pelosi.
Right. So there's
did Governor Lamb suffer any repercussions for not voting for Nancy Pelosi or any of the other, I believe, 5 members of the right side of the Democratic caucus?
Did they suffer any? I
don't know offhand.
I don't know either.
Yeah. So there's a lot of assumptions being made about why any of this happened. But what is assured, what we know for certain, is that until 4 or 5 members of the Progressive Caucus, the Squad, whatever you want to call it, agreed to vote for Nancy Pelosi, there's no way that Nancy Pelosi could become Speaker of the House. And my main crucial point, and I think that what really can't be ignored, and what really got lost in a lot of this discourse, because people weren't arguing the merits of this in good faith, they were arguing about Jimmy Dore, and I think there's a lot you can.
I think that I've been.
You are entitled to your feelings about Jimmy Dore, but the reality is there was a moment where we could have.
That when I argue that I don't want to be part of this because he's using this as some type of litmus test, that is actually a good faith argument.
I think that you're being honest about that. I don't think that reflects especially well.
You think it's a dumb perspective on politics and whatnot.
I don't not believe you.
But you think it's a good faith argument. Because you just said that is not a good faith argument, and I just want to be clear.
No, I think that people are not arguing in good faith about them. They're conflating. I think that what you said is true and honest, but that has nothing to do with the merits of force the vote as a tactic.
Well, as a tactic, if it existed...
I'm really glad you said that, Sam, because I think that's really honest of you to admit that your opposition is because Jimmy Dore is associated with it, and you don't think that Jimmy Dore is pushing it in good faith.
It's not just that Jimmy Dore is associated with it. It's as if like it's not like it's a car exists, and whether I get into that car is going to have something to do with who's driving.
Right. There are a lot of others that
I'm sorry. He was driving.
That's fine. A lot of why. Sorry, Sam. A lot of why Jimmy was so focused, so central to it, is frankly because people like just you on your show spent countless hours clipping his notes, talking about it.
The sequencing is wrong there. He was the only person who had his logo on the petition. For He's the first person.
I have a factual question.
Until after the vote, the organization came up with the logo and all of that after the vote.
Not true.
If I could make a point of information. You've been referencing forcethevote.org. What is that? Because, I mean, I know Force the Vote as a strategic proposal, as a tactical disagreement. I also know that people are organizing around this in a Slack of some kind. But is there, what
That's
is
not the same Slack, by the way. I want to be clear. The Slack message that Ryan Graham was circulating was from... I think a People's Party Slack. That's why I'm not a part of it. I'm not affiliated with the People's Party movement. The Force the Vote Slack is this random Slack that I've been tweeting out that it's got its own organizational structure. There's no leaders. They've just been trying to figure out what to do at this moment to try to fight for Medicare for all. So it's a completely different Slacks.
So my point is that, are we talking are we talking about a strategy, or are we talking about something weightier, something more organized than that?
I mean, as a strategy in a vacuum, I was, again, supportive, maybe not necessarily for the ask, in particular ask, but the tactic itself, I was supportive of. When it became hijacked, if you want to say, or simply it was already being driven by that person, and it started, instead of traveling to a distance, it became something to hit pedestrians with, however you want to do this metaphor, I decided I don't want to be sitting in that car. And I think it became even more, and then people were attacked for not wanting to sit and associate themselves with that. The tactic in a vacuum can be effective, but if it's being wielded in a certain way, I'm sorry, like then as soon as it becomes a tactic as a way of establishing that and essentially, disempowering the most progressive wing in the Democratic Party, I'm not going to lend what little force me and my IKEA panels can add to it.
Why not take the reins, Sam? Because my approach to it was, I saw the response that Jimmy was getting. I think that there is, frankly, value in having a more aggressive approach exist in the world. I think that everyone can't be the reasonable person in the room. We need to have anarchists. We need to have people farther to the left. Exerting pressure and threat.
I have anarcho-communist on my show. I appreciate that.
My argument, wait a minute, Sam.
It has nothing to do with ideology.
So my response was to say, okay, if people don't like Jimmy, let me write my own article and people can engage with the idea separately. And you know what all the responses to my article talked about? Jimmy. And so I tried to show leadership. I tried to show how you could be interested in the idea without some of the bombast that Jimmy was bringing to the equation. And I think that you, since you were the one who first even brought the idea to a lot of people's attention, could have taken leadership and said, I don't like what Jimmy's saying, but here, I'm going to be the focal point. I'm going to be the spokesperson for this issue. And I think nobody would have had a problem with that.
I think, like I say, the idea of forcing the vote on Medicare for all, it became a different, in my mind, the ask was not the best ask, but this thing had progressed. It wasn't my thing. I wasn't going to go in and try and like, address